I call this March 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to order. Commissioner Olivas, Member Sengel, and Trustee Benavides are excused this evening. All other members are present. So we'll start off with a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think we'll just do it together instead of having someone. If you'll all join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So next item is approval of the minutes. I make a motion to approve the March 5th, 2025 minutes. Is there a second? There's a second by Councilor Sanchez. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We're now on proclamations and awards. So we have our quarterly employee recognition awards. This is my first time as chair doing it this go around. This is one of my all-time favorite things to do. I think we actually, Chris remembers, we implemented this at the city of Albuquerque as well, just because I think it's really great to celebrate, you know, employees that go above and beyond. So I think we'll get started. We have Nick Lucas, who is going to be receiving, and if you guys want to make your way up to the podium if you're here, I think that way you can receive your award. So Mr. Lucas is recognized for his work in designing and crafting the utility's first Innovator of the Year award. Kelsey Bicknell, 150. Ms. Bicknell is recognized for her innovative thinking and helping to manage potential environmental impacts of reservoir rehab at the surface water treatment plant. Congratulations. And then we have Jonah Martinez, Robert Alcantar, Victor Corral, Jesus Rodriguez, Joseph Lucero, Arlo Gonzalez Jr., Edgardo Bencomo, Paul De Lolau, and they'll all be receiving $150. It doesn't look like appear that anyone's here, but these employees are recognized for their exemplary efforts in replacing more than 1,000 feet of still water line in a job that would otherwise have gone to a contractor, thereby saving the utility hundreds of thousands of dollars. So awesome. The next group of people, we have Raymond Barranca, Aaron Carrillo, Daniel Griego, Jose Hidalgo, Jared Hyatt, Raymond Jenkins Jr., Abraham Ramirez, Eric Reyes Vega, Daniel Cedillo, Ruben Valencia, Paul Yepa, Harry Romero, Marco Terrazas, and none of these, are these? He's a smart dude. He's here to get his $100. These individuals who are responsible for line location ahead of street excavation are recognized for their exemplary response to citywide fiber optic installation initiatives. So thank you again. Then we have Almaldelia Flores Garcia, $100. And Ms. Flores Garcia is recognized for demonstrating outstanding initiative and innovation in her role as research analyst in the collections section. So congratulations to her. Then we have Callie Berman, 9 hours. Ms. Berman is recognized for contributions in providing internal software training for staff in the utility development group. Then we have Jane Rael, 9 hours. Ms. Rael is recognized for exemplary efforts in managing the very challenging Volcano Cliffs transmission line projects. Congratulations. Next, we have Eric Williams and Angelo Martinez, $200 each. Mr. Martinez and Ms. Williams are recognized for their tireless efforts in overcoming numerous technical challenges to address emergency sewer collapse on Central Avenue. Yay, give them $400. They're not here, but I just want to say that that project, you know, I really give them a lot of credit. I'm sure many of us got numerous calls about the traffic and the congestion there, but at the end of the day, with the collapse and those old pipes that were there, and now replacing them with the new pipes is really going to be a tremendous help for that congested area. So thank you, guys. Next, we have David Romero, Agustin Naranjo, Anthony Fields, Andrew DeMarcus, and Michael Ariano, $200. These members of the facility maintenance staff are recognized for their successful efforts in preparing sites for inspection by the Environment Department. So congratulations. Next, we have Adrian Lucero, Angelo Herrera, Richard Gonzalez, Toby Siribaca, Stephen Tafoya, Samantha Dominguez. Each will be receiving $100. These members of the fleet maintenance section are recognized for their successful efforts to keep preventative maintenance work and repairs in-house during a period of short staffing. So thank you, sir. We'll wait till he gets his award and, oh, Siribaca. There was lots of them. So yeah. So again, that just shows that people are recognizing the water utilities employees and their hard work, which I think is always great. Thank you again. Now we'll move to public comment. Mrs. Salas, do we have anyone signed up to speak? And if we do, you will have 3 minutes to speak with a 2.5-minute warning. And then if you call the first speaker.
Madam Chair, first we have John Fleck.
Chair Pena and board members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is John Fleck. I work at the Utton Center over at the University of New Mexico School of Law. We're a water and natural resource policy research group, and I'm also a member of your technical customer advisory committee. I don't know if y'all have seen the river, but it's the lowest it's been at this point in the year since we've had a gauge at Central Avenue. It's an extraordinarily dry year, and it is a real test of our ability to manage water in this community, both with the Water Utility Authority and also the broader interacting collaborative nature of governance around water in this community as a whole. You're going to hear from Diane Agnew, and in the time between when Diane presented her annual operating plan to us on the TCAC, I think 3 weeks ago, and today, things have gotten demonstrably worse. It is a testimony to the work that the water utility has done as part of Water 2120 and the predecessor projects, the San Juan Chama Drinking Water Project, that in some sense, y'all's customers, we won't even notice this. That's a demonstration of success, but also there are some really interesting signs that we need to be watching that I think are concerning and worth paying attention to. But there are also some really hopeful signs, and I think there are a number of items on your agenda that illustrate sort of the kind of work we need to be doing and where we go from here. One of them is the Arroyo del Oso Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project, federal money for that. A really important project in technical terms, but also this local federal collaboration is very important. The Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District Water Exchange Agreement. This is a real strong demonstration of the importance of collaborative governance around this shared water supply that we have. And both of those two things, working with the federal government on the Arroyo del Oso project and working with the MRGCD, incredibly close collaborative relationship between the two agencies, the technical staff, Diane Agnew, and the water utility staff, and Markin at the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, kind of suggests the direction of the sort of collaborative partnerships that are going to be needed going forward, because there's some striking slides in Diane's presentation that I'll hope you notice. We've been very successful in conserving water, in reducing our use, and preserving our aquifer, and the aquifer has been rising, but as the river gets low, as it will again this year, we will once again need to shut off our river diversions, switch over to groundwater, and those curves are starting to flatten off. And that suggests, first of all, that we did the right thing by preserving the aquifer for bad times, because bad times are here, but that we also need to be thinking carefully about the steps we need to be taking going forward to ensure that the next time this happens and the time after that, my taps still run and my trees still get their water. And at the heart of this is really the importance of the kind of collaborative relationships that extend beyond simply us managing our own water supply, but the really successful interactions that your agency and your staff have built in partnership with the other water agencies with which we share this valley. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next, we have Roberto Ramirez.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Roberto Ramirez, Executive Board Member of AFSCME Local 624. Now you will hear the Executive Director's budget proposal for the new fiscal year. I respectfully urge the board to reallocate $5 million from the Rehab Fund special projects to increase employees' wages. The current 3% step increase proposed in the Executive Director's budget falls short. It doesn't reflect the rising cost of living, ongoing inflation, and the dedication our workforce brings to the utility every day. Our teams have earned national recognition from the EPA and AWWA, all while keeping the system safe, reliable, and resilient in the face of every challenge. Yet vacancies continue to grow and retention gets tougher. Higher paying opportunities are pulling our people away, and many of us stay because we believe the work in serving our community. There's a $20 million allocated for miscellaneous special projects, none of which can succeed without the workers who care about. Using just a fraction of that to support our workers is not only fair, it's essential. We ask you to invest in us, the workforce that keeps the utility running every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next, we have Steven Cabrera.
Good evening, Chair and board members. My name is Steve Cabrera, and I'm a proud member of the Local 624 with 10 years experience as a UT4 in the ABCWA Field Operations Division. I'm here tonight to speak not just for myself, but on behalf of the dedicated blue-collar employees who keep this utility running. As you all know, we are currently in the middle of contract negotiations, and we believe firmly that the time has come for this entity to recognize us for what we truly are, your number one asset. We are urging this board to give serious consideration to our proposal in the upcoming contract. We understand that no one could have foreseen the scale of inflation we're facing today, but while the cost of living continues to climb, our paychecks haven't. We've absorbed the burden of rising prices without any relief, and despite that, we've shown up again and again, especially when it mattered most. During the height of COVID-19, we were classified as essential workers. While much of the world shut down, we were out there working through freezing winters, blistering summers, and every emergency in between. We kept the water flowing. We made sure our community had safe, uninterrupted access to one of the most vital resources there is. While we work 24/7 to keep the infrastructure strong, we are the backbone of this utility. And while we take great pride in our work and we do it well, let's be clear, pride doesn't pay the bills. That's why we're asking for this board to use its power to allocate the funds and provide the support needed, not just to retain experienced, skilled employees, but to attract the next generation of talent. The future of this utility depends on that. This isn't about asking for favors. This is about fairness. A real pay increase isn't just justified, we believe it's overdue. We're expecting fair compensation for essential work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next online, we have Elaine Hubbard. I'll bring her in.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with John Fleck that collaborative efforts are showing results, but more is needed. I urge the utility to declare more than the stage 0 drought detailed in today's water report. The report shows that pumping is 130% over above what was planned, with plan being the annual operating plan and not the Water 2120 plan. Given that the river is projected to go dry through Albuquerque, the new annual operating plan says no diversions for 5 months, and during those months, groundwater will supply all of our needs, which will add to future water depletions in the river flows. According to the draft budget also on the agenda, Water 2120 includes Portfolio 1, a portfolio of supply options used to fill the gaps to meet future demand in the next 100 years. A key component going forward will be a shift from acquisition of water rights to the development of reuse facilities to have a more resilient supply. For Water 2120 to successfully stave off the need to acquire more water supplies, more action is needed. In the intervening 8 years since 2016, pumping has been more than 60% than Portfolio 1 projected, and depletions are 20% higher. So pumping has to be reduced, and I would suggest that metrics in the objectives be set out to show success, as well as more conservation efforts. The conservation efforts that are outlined in today's project don't show any amounts being conserved, and I would suggest that that's really another piece that's needed. And finally, I would ask that the written comments, which are better than my oral ones, be included, not only sent to board members, but in the actual written record of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. Is that the final speaker?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we will move on to announcements and communication. Our next meeting will be May 21st, 2025, here at 5 p.m. in the Vincent E. Grego Chambers. And we are moving on to introductions of legislation. The first item is R2515, and this is authorizing, and we're actually looking for immediate action on this, so we'll be voting to move this for consideration. Authorizing the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to accept grant award agreement R24AP 00548 with the Bureau of Reclamation for Arroyo del Oso Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. And I think we have Ms. Ortiz here to speak on this.
Good evening, Madam Chair and respected board members. My name is Marta Ortiz. I'm the Chief Finance Officer here at the Water Authority.
Madam Chair, I think we'll have this presentation under approvals if you move
Okay.
it for immediate action.
Okay, okay. I have her name listed here, so I.
And the
didn't
next
know
item
whether-
as well.
Okay, perfect. So then, thank you, Ms. Ortiz, for coming out.
You're welcome.
So then I need a motion to suspend the rules and consider this item for immediate action. So there's a motion, a second from Counselor Sanchez. All those in favor say yes. Yes, opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion passes. So this will be, again, under approvals. So then the next item is, it would be the same thing, Ms. Ortiz, so why don't you just stay up, because I think the last
Okay.
one is actually the presentation, although I have
Yes.
your name on all these. So R2516, amendment to the approved capital implementation program of Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. You'll be doing a presentation later, but right now I need a motion to suspend the rules to consider this item for immediate action. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Baca. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? The motion passes. So this will be presented under approvals as well. So next item is R2519, and this is for the letter of introduction, which will be heard at a future meeting. This is appropriating funds for the operating and capital improvement program budget for Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority for fiscal year July 1, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2026, and the 2026-2035 decade plan. Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair and respective board members. This evening, we're being presented as an introduction, as you said, is the proposed operational and capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year FY26. This starts in July of July 1st. The Water Authority Board will consider this resolution as well as the decade plan being proposed this evening, and will present this at the next meeting as well. The utility is facing a significant amount of challenges in creating this budget that's presented to you. There's a lot of uncertainty and increasing operational costs. Several factors driving the financial pressures are inflation, which affects material costs, supplies, and services that we need for essential operations of the utility. Labor shortages in our consultants and contractors, which delays projects and higher prices in those contracts. We're seeing a 8% vacancy rate within our own workforce, which creates recruitment and retention struggles. And additionally, the supply chain shortages continue to disrupt our orders, buying equipment, materials, and that's pushing prices higher. We're seeing conservation efforts, which helps with sustainability. However, it's resulting in lower revenues that were being collected. Also, there's a challenge in reducing water loss, which also affects our rates as well. Given the budget's challenges, the proposed budget reflects several outcomes. It shows nominal growth in the service area. We're seeing a minimum amount of growth in our number of increased accounts. We're seeing increased conservation efforts. Operational costs, again, are rising with chemicals, repairs and maintenance, IT software, where they require regular maintenance and updates. Utility costs are also a struggle. Additionally, we're seeing a need for an increased amount of funds for our CIP as well. So that's recognized in this. A crucial factor in this budget is the majority of our expenses are fixed rather than variable. So that limits our flexibility in financial adjustments. Despite the mounting costs that we're seeing, there is no proposal in this budget for a rating adjustment. So we're continuing to find ways to manage the rising expenditures that we're experiencing. The next slide represents the Water Authority's 6 distinct funds. We have a general fund, services primarily funded by rates. We have a debt service fund, which manages the payments of debt, and this is funded by rates as well. The San Juan Chama Project Contractors Association Fund, which we're fiscal agent for that association. And then we have 3 capital projects funds: a rehab fund, growth, and Water 2120. All are funded by rate revenue, bonds, loans, grants, UECs, and water resource charges. The proposed budget assumes the following. Revenues. The revenues incurred will cover the 2026 operational expenses. It'll support capital projects. It'll recover operational costs and services, fund our debt service requirements, as well as stabilize our fund balance. Other key assumptions, again, nominal growth in the service area. It reflects a 3% cost of living increase, higher fringe benefit premiums, no rise in operational costs due to efficiencies and improved business processes that are being implemented, and increased funding for capital projects for repairing our aging infrastructure. The next slide reflects our financial plan, which is a comprehensive outlook of expected financial trends over the next 10 years from 2025 through 2035. We incorporate capital needs, debt service obligations, available resources, and expenses in that finance plan. And then we ensure that we have financial stability throughout that, so we can look at our future needs and obligations and use it as a tool to build our budgets. The next slide reflects the revenue sources that are being budgeted for FY26. The primary source of revenue is $155,642,000 for water. Wastewater, excuse me, is $93,172,000, an additional $11,033,000 for miscellaneous revenue, which is like interest revenue and various fees that we charge here at the Water Authority. The next slide shows primary expense categories aligned with the budget assumptions. The total, $78 million is allocated for debt service. Wages are allocated at $76,557,000. Operating expenses are $74,184,000, and the transfer to capital has risen to $31,402,000. Additionally, the overall budget for risk and workers' comp is $4,156,000. These expenses collectively are prevailing over the economic conditions that we're currently facing. The next slide shows the allocations of the general fund expenses by program. The overall expenditures remain steady. However, the increase in transfers and funds observed are resources for additional capital spending. This is crucial, aimed at maintaining safety, functionality, and sustainability. The funds are pivotal for supporting infrastructure to include water and wastewater systems, buildings, and all of which are essential to the operations of the utility. Moving on to the capital improvement program. The upcoming fiscal year allocates $96.5 million in various key components, which includes $70 million for the basic rehab program, $4 million for growth projects, $20 million for special projects, and $2.5 million for Water 2120 projects. The next slide is a presentation of the decade plan, outlined fund strategies for infrastructure. This plan aligns with the financial framework, which is the finance plan, incorporating current funding resources. Additionally, it has the latest updates for the Water 2120 projects as well. Future capital challenges. We have a struggle with balancing needs and resources. With the escalation of project costs driven by economic factors, this has led to the water and wastewater expenses rising at a rate of 115% versus 49% back in 2010. A significant gap in the request alone surpasses $1 billion, yet we only put in the plan $846 million could be allocated within the decade plan. A significant gap remains about 16 to 17 million per year over the next 3 years and nearly 9 million over the next decade. To address these challenges, investments in aging water and sewer infrastructure is critical alongside securing funding for Water 2120. As a future capital funding mechanism, we're going to be assessing this in the next evaluation of the independent rate study. The next slide presents the overview of the preliminary capital request versus the resources and how it aligns with the decade plan. To summarize, the resolution outlines the allocation for the upcoming FY26 budget and decade plan priorities. It will be brought to you at the next meeting for your consideration, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just looking at it, and you said there was a 3% cost of living increase. And then I also noticed that it said increase in fringe benefits. What does that mean exactly?
Fringe benefits are to include health, dental, vision, and we contribute to the retirement as well. So all the fringe benefits related to our employees.
And when you say that increases, does that mean the cost or the benefits increase with the cost remaining the same?
We are pooled with the city of Albuquerque for their benefits, and there's going to be an increase. I believe they said 4% in health this next year.
Okay, thank you.
So that's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sanchez. Are there any other questions? No? I don't see any. Would you like to add anything, Mark? Mr. Sanchez? No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. So now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. I can read it into the record, but we don't have to take a vote on the consent agenda, correct? We do? Okay, I thought so. Okay. R2517 is authorizing the removal of certain uncollectible accounts from the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority accounts receivable records FY 2020 and prior. B, R2518 is authorizing the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to submit congressional directed spending grant request to the 118th Congress of the United States. And C is C258, approval of a contract with Instuform Technologies, LLC, as a result of the B20250000012. Anyway, FY25 small diameter SAS rehab trenchless project, 3998.00. So that is the consent agenda. Now we'll move on to approvals. And we have R2512, which is establishing the one-year objectives for the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority in fiscal year 2026 to meet goals. And we have Ms. Susan Lander here to present on that.
Madam Chair, for the consent agenda, you need a vote on that.
Oh, so that's what I was asking. So, okay. So is there a motion?
Move approval.
Move approval.
So there's a motion and a second from Commissioner Baca and Councilor Lewis. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion, any abstentions? Motion passes. Now we are on approvals. And I think I read R25 into the record. So welcome, Ms. Lander.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. As previously presented at the March meeting, the one-year objectives outlined in this resolution align with the Water Authority's business system goals, which are guarded by long-term goal statements. Leveraging our performance measures to identify service delivery gaps, these objectives aim to enhance performance levels, address areas of improvement, and advance ongoing projects or programs. Some of the objectives are carried over from fiscal year 2025 due to their complexity or continued relevance. Before you tonight is amendment number 1, which adds to goal number 4, business planning and management. Objective 16, work with the Albuquerque Planning Department, the Office of the Mayor, and the Albuquerque City Council to improve the ABCWUA development review and permitting process to reduce the time from plan submittal to approval from the Water Authority to 90 days. Submit a new process plan to the ABCWUA Board by the end of the first quarter of FY26. And I stand before you to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to, we have a floor amendment, and we have a floor amendment number 1, and this is Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just read this, objective 16, so that was read. So I move amendment number 1.
There's a motion and a second by Councillor Sanchez for amendment number 1, for floor amendment number 1. All those in favor say yes. Oh, you have a question? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
sorry. Councillor Lewis, how long does it take now? I'm just curious. It says.
Madam Chair, what was the
90
question?
In your amendment, it says it's improving or reducing the time to 90 days. How long does it take now?
Well, it's supposed to be, Madam Chair, it's supposed to be 90 days. There's always challenges to it. We've had a lot of conversations about this. This is, of course, an objective, and the same objective that, working with our planning department on as well. It's about 90 days right now. That's the goal, and this would be to just elevate that as ways that we can make sure we hit those 90 days. It's often about 180 days or more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. Councillor Lewis, do you want to close, or do we just go to the vote? Okay. All those in favor of floor amendment number 1, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? That motion passes. So we're now back on the bill. Are there any questions on R 2512? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of R 2512? I think we already did that, correct? Did we make the motion? We did, okay. So all those in favor of R 2512, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Now, R 2513, authorizing the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to enter into a loan agreement with the New Mexico Environment Department for the purposes of obtaining project loan funds in the principal amount of $9 million plus accrued interest and principal forgiveness in the amount of $1 million for a total of $10 million, designating the use of the funds for the purpose of that is defined in the most current project description from approved and as approved by the NMED, declaring the necessity for the loan, providing that loan will be payable and collectible solely from the borrower's pledged revenues defined below, prescribing other details concerning the loan and the security therefore. Ms. Ortiz, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair and respective board members. This was previously introduced at the last board meeting. For your consideration, it authorizes the Water Authority to enter into a $10 million grant loan agreement. $9 million of that is repayable at a 0.01% interest rate, and the $1 million is grant funded. This will allow the board, with approval of the board, allows the executive director to finalize that agreement, as well as oversee the construction of the new reuse reservoir pump station facility located at Mesa del Sol and Hubble Trunk for irrigation and industrial needs. And I stand for questions.
Before we go to any questions, is there a motion for approval of R 2513? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of R 2513. Now, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. All those in favor of R 2513, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? The motion passes. Now we are on R 2514, authorizing the executive director to enter into an agreement with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District for the exchange of San Juan project water. And Ms. Agnew will speak on that, but I will make a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Commissioner Baca. Ms. Agnew.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for your time tonight. This is for the Water Authority to enter into an agreement with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District to give them, basically to spot them some water. So we get our San Juan Chama allocations on the 15th of each month, and that's when it's like we're physically able to release it down to the Middle Valley for use. The Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District anticipates meeting their allotment ahead of time. I do want to bring up that this agreement, as we've presented it in the staff report and resolution, is specific to June. As Mr. Fleck indicated, conditions have changed since the March forecast. It's much drier than we all thought it was going to be, and MRGCD anticipates needing to use this agreement for their May allocation instead of their June. What we would be seeking to do is wherever you see June in the agreement and the resolution, replace that with May, so that they can begin those releases. And ultimately, the benefit here is that with us providing the water ahead of time, Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District can incrementally release that instead of sending one big push of water that benefits the entire Middle Valley irrigators. It means smoother flows for us as well, and the possibility that the central gauge stays where we need it for diverting, and then also benefits the species in the area. We have communication from Reclamation, so we know what the volume is going to be. So we're not going to loan them more water than they'll end up getting, but it does help both entities out. And with
Thank you, Madam Chair. This, for your approval this evening, is a Water Smart grant in the amount of $400,000. This application process takes a long time. We applied for it back in October 2023. We just got notification that we were awarded. This is with the Bureau of Reclamation, excuse me, for the Arroyo del Oso Aquifer Storage Recovery Project. The match requirements are going to be coming from the state. You approved that last meeting from the state bill for the match requirements, which is $400,000 as well. We got awarded in October of 2024. So I stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions on R 2515? Seeing none, congratulations.
Thank you.
With that, is there a motion and second for a motion for approval of R 2515?
I'll move approval.
So there's a motion and a second. So all those in favor say yes. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? That motion passes. We are now on to E, which is R 2516, amendment to the approved capital improvement program of the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. And we have Ms. Ortiz again. Before we go into discussion, I think we do this at the city. We actually make a motion ahead of time. So is there a motion for approval?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, GovTV couldn't hear your mic. Is it?
Oh my God. It's off. Okay, thank you so much. So is there, I'll make a motion, is there a second for approval of R 2516?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Baca. So now Ms. Ortiz.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution, the Water Authority received $64.5 million in ARPA funding through Bernalillo County. This resolution allows $200,000 to reallocate from the Carniwell Water System Expansion Project to the Carniwell Sewage Collection Project without altering the total funding amount. This resolution also allows for flexibility to shift funds between approved projects to align the amendments made by the county. Additionally, it allows for the executive director to negotiate any modifications to those agreements to ensure that the funds are are spent in a timely basis without having to come to the board every time we make an amendment. I stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Ms. Ortiz? Seeing none, all those in favor of R 2516, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next, we are on almost the final item of the evening. This is other business, and we have OB 256, Water Protection Advisory Board 2025 update. Ms. Howell.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Elaine Howe. I'm the current chair of the Water Protection Advisory Board. Thank you for letting me speak to you about the role of this advisory board and our water quality concerns. The Water Protection Advisory Board was created to establish a combined city, county, and water authority advisory group to help protect our local waters, both groundwater and surface waters. Our purpose is to study and advise water quality issues, ensure coordination between the city, county, and the water authority, and to advocate for protection of our waters. Each year, the Water Protection Advisory Board creates an annual report covering activities from the prior year and setting priorities for the upcoming year. 3 key priorities that we have for 2025. First is watershed health, where we continue to track monitoring efforts to improve stormwater quality in both the city and the county. Second is intergovernmental coordination and communication, where we receive project updates from groups such as the Policy Implementation Committee, which is comprised of technical staff from the city, the county, and the water authority. We also receive updates from the Water Quality Control Commission and NMED. For the past few months, we've been following legislative progress of the state-led surface water permitting program. This important piece of legislation gives our state primacy to implement the Federal Clean Water Act, provides protection for both continuously flowing waters and ephemeral waters, and creates the Neglected and Contaminated Sites Fund. I'm very happy to report that this legislation was approved during the 2025 legislative session and signed into law by the governor. Yes. Monitoring, our third priority for the year is monitoring the status of known groundwater contamination sites, such as the Carlisle Village Cleaner Site and the Kirtland Air Force Base jet fuel leak site. The Kirtland jet fuel leak is particularly troubling since contaminants from this site are encroaching on one of the water authority's drinking water supply well fields. The Water Protection Advisory Board is deeply concerned about the slow pace of cleanup and the lack of collaboration between the Air Force and key stakeholders. I'll give you some details, although I'm sure you're already familiar with this. The leak was originated from a bulk jet fuel storage facility on Kirtland Air Force Base. The leak was discovered in 1999 and remains a contaminant concern more than 25 years later. To be fair, the Air Force has installed numerous groundwater monitoring wells, has collected numerous water quality samples, and has implemented a pump and treat system to remove contaminants that spread far off base. Unfortunately, cleanup efforts have stalled, and significant amounts of spilled fuel remain in the aquifer. Allowing this fuel and associated chemicals to remain in the aquifer significantly restricts the water authority's access to important local drinking water supply. Just last month, the Water Protection Advisory Board sent letters to our New Mexico senators and representatives, encouraging them to take action to support collaboration between the Air Force and key stakeholders and to demand faster cleanup at the site. Specifically, we requested first for the Air Force to reinitiate early technical collaboration with the Water Authority. Collaborative meetings used to occur on a regular basis, but in 2018, the Air Force stopped participating. Second, we requested for the Air Force to resume interim treatment of the remaining fuel in the soil. Active remediation was temporarily stopped in 2015 to assess cleanup progress, but rather than reinstating the treatment, the Air Force dismantled all of the soil vapor treatment equipment. And third, we requested for the Air Force to move quickly to identify a final treatment option and clean up the remaining contamination. especially within the area of the initial leak. Currently, there is no active treatment of remaining fuel at the source. The Water Protection Advisory Board and the Water Authority have recommended that the Air Force implement interim treatment while the final treatment is selected. On the bright side, when I attended a public meeting just last week that was hosted by the Air Force and NMED, I learned that the Air Force has made good progress towards selection of a final remedy. They're hoping to complete and submit the document that describes feasible treatment options by the end of 2026. This is not the end of the road, though. The final treatment option will still have to be selected and then implemented. Also, NMED has taken steps towards hiring staff who will be devoted to working on the specific contamination issue. This should also speed up the cleanup process. In summary, the Water Protection Advisory Board's recommendations are twofold. First, the Water Authority should continue insisting on technical collaboration with the Air Force. As a key stakeholder and the entity responsible for ensuring our drinking water is safe and meets all federal and state regulations, having a seat at the table to discuss treatment options seems important. Second, it seems prudent for the Water Authority to develop a contingency plan in case the nearest supply well has to be taken out of service. Climate change and our current drought may require the Water Authority to pump more groundwater to supplement the surface water supply, in which case access to clean, uncontaminated groundwater is critical. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. Are there any questions? Commissioner Baca.
Not a question. I just wanted to thank you for your service. I really do appreciate what you all do and help us understand where we are. It's not a small thing, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, ditto. So thank you, Ms. Howe. I appreciate your advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have OB 25-7, Water Authority Annual Operating Plan for April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. Ms. Agnew.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I am here tonight to present to you our 2025 Annual Operating Plan. And this is a roadmap to what we think our operations are going to look like between April 1st and March 31st of next year. But it is not it's not a promise. So a lot of these things you'll hear me qualify as we are forecasting to the future and we'll be responding to reality. And this annual operating plan is a requirement of our biological opinion with the Fish and Wildlife Service for our drinking water plant. It is also a really important tool. We use this tool to coordinate internally so that we can anticipate operational needs, staffing, CIP projects, the timing and what projects we need to bring on board. And it also helps us to work with our partner agencies to anticipate how we need to work together for water management decisions in the Middle Rio Grande. This is based on forecasted conditions. It's not binding, but it allows all of us to see what our plans are generally so that we can ensure to the Fish and Wildlife Service, for example, that we're going to operate in accordance with our biological opinion, and then helps us as the Water Authority make plans internally. There are some key inputs that I will go into detail in the next slide. And then, like I said, this AOP reflects coordination between the Water Resources Division, groundwater operations, and the drinking water plant, as well to build the annual operating plan and then also moving forward. Before we get into the inputs, though, I do think it's worthwhile to look at where we are. These charts are showing the snow water equivalent for the Upper San Juan Basin and the Upper Rio Grande Basin. These were taken on April 15th to support submittal of these slides, and they have changed. But I want to highlight on here two things. One of them is that black line, that is 2025 snow water equivalent. So it's showing what that snowpack looks like over time. And the bottom red line is the minimum measurement. Coincidentally, that minimum line tracks with 2018, and you'll see through my presentation that 2018 is really an important year as an analog for us. In the Upper San Juan Basin, snowpack is slightly above that minimum value. It's still in that red zone, and you can see that we have tipped over into runoff. By April 15th, we're seeing that snowpack start to melt. The storm that we saw last weekend caused a little bit of a bump up, but generally we're still going down. And in the upper Rio Grande Basin, you can see that 2025 really has been tracking pretty close to that minimum measurement / 2018. So those are, 2025 is looking a lot like 2018, and 2018 looks a lot like that minimum measurement. Before I move on, really quick, I also wanted to highlight that we listened to a National Weather Service presentation earlier this week as part of the federal annual operating plan presentation. And one of the things that I thought was notable about this, the snow water equivalent, the snowpack this year, is it's about 25% of the past 30 years. So we are dry, we are seeing that lower end of the measurements, but it's within what has been seen on record. And then this is really to talk about that a little bit further. I know it's a bit of squiggly lines, but this is showing flows at Central over the past years from 2016 to 2024. And the blue line on there is 2018. So that's an analog year that, like I said, the snow water equivalent is tracking with 2018. You'll see in the forecasting that we were doing for 2025 that that was using the 2018 hydrograph. And you can see that the green squiggly line is tracking pretty close to 2018 for flows at Central to date. So it's looking like a decent analog year. And I have that on there to highlight that we've been here before. We have seen low flows. You can see some of those shaded lines do dip even below the 2018 line, going to almost zero. So historically, at Central Gauge, we have seen low flows before. So let's start talking about the AOP. One of the most important inputs to the AOP are our conditions in SP 4830. That is our water right permit with the State Engineer's Office for the drinking water plant. And in that permit, we have very specific conditions that dictate when we can and cannot operate our plant. One of those is condition 12. This defines the stream gauge at Central Avenue has to be above 122 cubic feet per second. And in addition to that, we have another gauge that we have to be tracking, and that's at the Alameda Bridge. And flows at native Rio Grande system flows at the Alameda gauge need to be above 195 CFS for us to fully operate our plant. Below that, we have to start curtailing. And then if that Alameda gauge goes below 130 CFS, we have to stop diversions entirely. So we are bounded at those two measurement locations to determine when we operate. And then the AOP has these conditions in there, and though we don't ride tight to those limits. So even though our permit says 122 CFS, we have really set a threshold of 130 CFS for shutting off the plant so that we don't risk violating our permit. Other things that we are putting into the AOP, minimum groundwater pumping. We do have to maintain a minimum amount of groundwater pumping to keep our well field ready to go in case there's an unanticipated shutdown at the plant, which can happen for a number of reasons. We need to make sure that we can meet customer demand no matter what happens, so we have a minimum number of wells ready to rock. We also have reuse in the AOP, so we assume a certain amount of reuse every year. We base it on a 3-year average. And then we have our North Non-Potable project. That is using untreated San Juan Chama water that's diverted near the Alameda pump station from a subsurface rainy collector. That also is in the AOP, so we assume a 3-year average for the annual projection. And built into the AOP, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is that we shut down the North Non-Potable if there's drying in the Albuquerque Reach, because we're only permitted to divert surface water. If there's drying, we are not able to get surface water into that system to deliver. And then we also account for ASR. Both of our aquifer storage and recovery projects are in the AOP. We assume that we can hit our full annual target, which is around 2,700 acre feet, if everything's able to operate as planned. Importantly, though, the large-scale ASR project can only recharge if the plant is up and running, and then the Bear Canyon is limited to October through March. Looking back, this chart is showing you the 2024 central flows as well as our operation. The dark line is showing you what our actual flow conditions were, and then the dashed line is showing you what our annual operating plan was projecting with the forecast from reclamation. There's pretty good agreement between those forecasts and what we actually observed, but there's a few key elements to last year's operations that we couldn't and didn't anticipate. One of those, importantly, actually, was that we had flood operations in our AOP for April through May. But what happened in June was there was a significant 100-year storm event in the Rio Chama that deposited a sediment plug below Abiquiu Dam that reduced the channel capacity in the Rio Chama so much so that they could no longer release San Juan Chama water from Abiquiu. So we prematurely lost access to our San Juan Chama water, which we worked with the State Engineer Office to get permission to continue diverting through an exchange agreement out of water in Elephant Butte. But that exchange agreement was contingent on our ability to divert without impacting downstream native water users. And around June 30th was when those flows, you can see the flows at Central started to have a really steep decline. We went from around 550 to 450 in a couple of days. So we made the call to shut off the plant so that we were in compliance with that exchange agreement. And then the day before is when we got that really large storm here in town that ended up with that spike you see in the flows. So we shut down right around when we anticipated shutting down the plant ultimately, but there are some conditions that sediment plug persisted through the entire summer, which meant that the exchange agreement couldn't be utilized that entire summer due to low flows at Central and the inability to release San Juan Chama water from Abiquiu. We also, we were planning on needing to shut down the North Non-Potable system in 2024. We ended up not needing to do that because the reach in Albuquerque stayed mostly wet, thanks to some limited monsoonal activity. And then we brought the plant on November 7th, right as the flows were kicking up to above our threshold. And then these two charts are showing, we'll focus first on the one on the left. This is showing a comparison of what the AOP forecasted our demand would be and our use of groundwater and surface water, and then what we actually ended up doing. So the faded bars are showing what we forecasted, and the dark full colors are showing what we actually did. And generally, the AOP was below or above what we actually realized. So you can see, for example, in June, the forecasted total demand for June was close to 12,000 acre feet. In reality, it was around 10,000 acre feet. This bar chart is showing that we're pretty close, that our AOP is doing a pretty good job of helping us understand what to anticipate for the year, and then the actual response to flow conditions and the various challenges of operations and water system management are the difference. And then I'd like to also highlight on here that we had July quite a bit different as well, that total demand was significantly lower. And then on the right is just showing a comparison only of our drinking water plant and groundwater over time since 2014. And you can see in 2020 that green bar jumps way up. That's our groundwater pumping. And that 2020 was our first year of ever having to shut down the drinking water plant, and that was due to low flows in the Middle Rio Grande. And we were off for 4.5 months. Every year since 2020, we've had to turn off our plant. And the period of time that we've had to turn off our plant has been dependent entirely on flows in the Middle Rio Grande. Do we see monsoons? Are there other operational constraints? And the groundwater pumping after 21 has been lower. So we are shutting off the plant. We're also reducing our groundwater pumping to maximize our surface water as much as we possibly can. But those are linked directly. But what does that mean for our aquifer management? So these two charts are showing 2 of the 9 wells that we use for like temperature checks on the aquifer. We work with the USGS to monitor 114 wells in our service area. They're equipped with transducers to allow us to see real-time water level measurements. And these 9 wells we've identified are across the service area for us to be like, hey, how is the aquifer responding to our management practice? The top right is a site that's over just north of Paseo del Norte in Wyoming. And that is showing that the groundwater levels are trending upwards, slightly, but upwards. And that's, to me, indicating that even though we are using more groundwater in the years that we have to shut off the plant in the summer, we're doing it in a way that's managing our aquifer, that we're not seeing significant decline. And then the second well on here, the Del Sol divider, this is in the southern part of the eastern part of the service area on Constitution and Jefferson. That is arguably flatlining. So there is a bit of a dip in 2020 when we had to shut off the plant, but generally the groundwater levels are staying pretty stable. And those like squiggles are just showing you the change between winter and summer groundwater levels. All right, so let's talk about 2025. These charts are showing the forecasted conditions at Abiquiu and Central from the Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau of Reclamation is responsible for doing forecasting modeling for the Rio Grande system, and we rely heavily on that effort. The way the forecasting works with reclamation is they get a total volume that's forecasted from NRCS, and then they take that volume and they find an analog hydrograph to use in their forecasting. 2025, turns out the 2018 was a hydrograph that was the best analog for expected conditions in 2025. So if you remember those charts at the beginning, snowpack was tracking with 2018, flows on Central so far tracking with 2018, and our forecast models using 2018. That's giving us some confidence that we are entering into conditions that we have experienced before and have an analog. There's a couple of important differences that are worth noting. That 2018 we had significant storage upstream from a really wet prior year. That's all to say that we've been here before and we have management practices to follow. Abiquiu outflow, we look at this to see if we need to anticipate flood operations. Flood operations this year is defined at any flows out of Abiquiu greater than 1,000 CFS. You can see that in no scenario do we get close to that, so we're not anticipating flood operations. And Central, we are looking for when flows go below 122 CFS, and we see that happening at end of April and going through October. And then Reclamation made the decision to indicate no to low monsoon conditions in 2018, so you can see that reflected in the hydrograph. They did this based on some of the National Weather Service forecasts. And then this is showing what we anticipate our San Juan Chama allocation to be this year. It is anticipated that our San Juan Chama allocation will be close to 37%. This will be the lowest allocation we've ever received in the project. And this chart on the right is showing what the allocations have been since 2012. And you can see we've had several years of full allocation, but I'd like to pull out 2018 again, just for an analog here. So 2018 in this bar chart shows that we received 86,000 acre feet on the San Juan Chama project. If that orange bar is showing how much water was in Heron at the start of the year, we call that carryover water. So 2017 was an amazingly wet year. Like flows were great. They were able to store 70,000 acre feet of water in El Vado. And they got so much water in Heron that they carried over 55,000 acre feet in Heron. So 2018, we started off with 55,000 acre feet. If you correct for that, 2018 would have been a 36% allocation for San Juan Chama water. So again, that 2018 is just a really good analog for what to anticipate this year. But it will be the first year we've received that low of a San Juan Chama allocation. And if we look at what the central gauge looks like and think about what it means for our operations, we use the 70% exceedance scenario. This is so we're conservative. 70% exceedance means there's a 70% chance that conditions will be better than what we're planning for. And that just means that we're able to make sure that we have planned for kind of like like kind of worst case scenario, and we're ready to go for when conditions are better. We are planning on no drinking water diversions after April and extending all the way through end of October. We will be using that shutdown time to do any projects around the drinking water plant, utilizing staff to work through a tick list so that they're available if we need, when we're ready to resume operation of the plant. And I'd just like to reiterate, this is just a plan, so this is based on forecasting. I did not get a crystal ball when I started this position, but this is the best tool that we have. We will be making decisions based on actual conditions. So watching those gauges, we're in almost daily communication with our water agency partners like Reclamation and Army Corps to anticipate what will happen down here. But we do need to have a plan to work with our internal divisions to make sure we're ready to shut down the plant and then get it ready to go. And that's what this chart's reflecting. And then this is what it looks like as far as composition of water. So blue is our surface water, green is our groundwater. And you can see that we are planning on being exclusively on groundwater from May through September, and then we'll be resuming drinking water plant in October, like mid to late October. And there's another part of this plan that I'd like to tease out. So the North Non-Potable system is using San Juan Chama water that I mentioned, that's from that subsurface diversion. That diversion we are anticipating having to turn off this year. We are expecting drying in the Albuquerque Reach to begin in May and extend through October. So those that chart I have on the right that's saying 3%, 1%, that's reflecting operation of the North Non-Potable, but it also reflects needing to shut down that system for periods of time during those months in response to drying in the Reach. We are still utilizing reuse, however, and we are prioritizing surface water as much as we can, when we can. And then regional collaboration, like Mr. Fleck highlighted, this is a critical part of water management right now. And the Water Authority has, I believe, really stepped up and filled a critical role in the Middle Valley. One of the ways is that Elvado Reservoir has been undergoing maintenance since 2021. Starting in 2021, they had no storage in Elvado. They just completely emptied it, and it was a really big deal to remove that from the reservoir system. And last year, Bureau of Reclamation approached the Water Authority and said that they would like to start doing what they called first fill storage. They wanted to start experimenting with putting water in Elvado to see what they could put in there, but they needed water to do that. So they came to the Water Authority and asked if we'd be willing to use our San Juan Chama water to help with that first fill experiment, and we said yes. So since November through just last month, the majority of water in Elvado was Water Authority San Juan Chama water that they were able to use to demonstrate they could get through phase 1 and phase 2 of filling. They had 16,000 acre feet in Elvado at the end of March. That means that now we have 16,000 acre feet of storage upstream that we didn't have a year ago, and that's from our creative use of our San Juan Chama water. We had it in Heron, we needed to move it to Abiquiu anyhow, so we just let it sit and park at Elvado for them to do their experiment. We also had the MRDCD loan, which you all approved. Thank you very much. This was a collaboration and coordination effort that will ultimately benefit the Middle Valley and both MRGCD and the Water Authority. We're continuing coordination on the Rio Chama channel capacity. That sediment plug still is up there. The Water Authority supported the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission by obtaining all of the permits that were required for sediment removal that occurred between October and December. So that sediment removal not only helped San Juan Chama water releases, but it also helped Rio Grande compact deliveries. So that was one effort that we undertook that was easy to utilize our internal capacity to the benefit of multiple stakeholders, and that work is ongoing. And we are continuing to work with MRGCD and Fish and Wildlife Service to support the 2025 Jiggle. It's a funny name, but it's just to help the Rio Grande silvery minnow with spawning. I don't know why it's called a jiggle, but it's to create an artificial pulse of water at the Isleta Dam to help inspire spawning in the minnow, recovery of the eggs that result from that. And then those eggs, many of them will go to the Biopark Refugium, where they are nurtured and grown into viable fish that they can release in November to augment fish in the river. The Water Authority is the sole financial contributor to that refugium. So we pay for the staff, we pay for that facility, and as of Monday, it sounded like they had like 100,000 minnow that were being reared at the refugium. And then also, we had a coordination effort with the MRGCD. You heard Kelsey get an award for this, but we needed to move water very quickly from our settling pond so that we could continue the work to maintain it. And we worked with MRGCD to use one of their laterals to move that water. We were able to work with them to get that in place in 2 days and reducing the time frame to empty the pond from what we were thinking could be 2.5 months to 6 days. So many opportunities to coordinate and collaborate to make sure we are being as efficient with our water management practices and sustainable. And so just to recap, our AOP is our best understanding of conditions today. It's based on model forecasts, and our actual operations will be based on conditions that we observe at those 2 gauges. But we do expect extended low period of flows and drinking water plant shut down. And I'll stand for any questions.
Councillor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mostly a comment, I guess. I thought that was genius that you did the first fill project in reference to Alvarado, being that it was dry and made it up. I thought that was just an excellent idea and just a genius plan. So whoever came up with that one, kudos to you. That was really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No? Same thing, just wow, you know, I think this is a testament to what Mr. Fleck said earlier, is just about how, you know, you guys are doing a really good job. We just have to still be vigilant in what we're doing. So good work. And obviously to the workers at the Water Authority, you guys are the ones that make that happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next we are on item C, OB 25-8, Water Report. Mr. Kelly.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm Mark Kelly. I'm here to do the water report, and I like to think of, you know, we got like layers of an onion. You know, we've got our really long-term planning. We've got Water 2120, and then we've got our yearly planning, the AOP that Diane was talking about, and then we've got our month-to-month drought watch, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. So, you know, we look at the drought severity and coverage index to see how that's going. It is, all of Bernalillo County is at 300 right now in the severity and coverage index, and that automatically bumps us into a drought advisory when we're at 300 and above. And for March, which was our latest data, we were pumping 98% groundwater, and the only surface water we had was our North non-potable San Juan Chama water. We had a bit of a hiccup during our dredging at the plant that didn't enable us to utilize the plant during March. That ended up increasing our groundwater pumping versus the goal. We're actually at 128% of where we thought we would be over the AOP from last water year. But our GPCD is looking good. You know, we are still at 126, which is under our goal of 133 for this year. When we look at the temperature and accumulation, you know, we put these slides together a week ahead of time. So we did have a slight increase in precipitation from last Saturday's storm, but it did not get anywhere near that normal line, and we are still looking at very hot and dry conditions. Thus, the monthly drought outlook for the whole state pretty much is drought persisting. So when we look at our drought management plan, and there's several indicators that we look at to try and figure out where we're going to be on this matrix of drought stages. And our DSCI is at 300 or above, because we're at 300. So then we start looking into how is our groundwater pumping going, and we're at 128% of our goal, and we are at less than 2 GPCD over the goal because we're under the goal. And yeah, you can see that puts us into stage 0, which is called drought advisory. Here's a flow chart on how we get there, the decision-making process, and also it explains some of the measures that we are going to be doing as a result of being in drought advisory. And those are to increase our public education, to offer our $20 drought drought classes with a $20 rebate, and to develop our drought campaigns and to monitor local conditions. And Amos is going to talk about some of those things when he discusses our conservation plan for this upcoming watering system in the next presentation. But that's kind of where we are entering into drought advisory right now. And I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I saw a above-average monsoon prediction, or I don't know if you saw the same thing or if you're taking some of that into account.
Madam Chair and Councilor Lewis, yes, there is a chance of us getting a above average or equal chances of having a regular monsoon towards the end of the monsoon season, towards the end of the summer. You know, that is something that we hope will happen. You know, when we do have rain, our customers do respond, and they do not water as much, especially outside, which will help our groundwater pumping and, you know, just help everything overall. So I'm hopeful that will happen, yes.
What kind of impact does that normally make? Let's say if it's above average, does it make a pretty big impact as far as on our plans and what we're looking at?
I'd say in terms of, Madam Chair and Councilor Lewis, I'd say in terms of our long-term planning, monsoons are quite difficult to predict. So I'd say we're really predicting for the worst and hoping for the best when it comes to those monsoons.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we're on to item D, OB 25-9, Water Conservation Program, Spring and Summer Conservation and Drought Messaging. Mr. Arbour.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Amos Arbour, and I was recently promoted to the Water Conservation Program Manager. I've been at the Water Authority for 8 years, working with the Lawn to Xeriscape Transformation rebate. My background is in landscape architecture, horticulture. I'm a certified arborist and a native of Albuquerque. This is my first time speaking before this governing board, and today I'm excited to highlight the Water Conservation Program's strategy for promoting available resources, incentives, and enforcement measures this spring. Spring has arrived, bringing with it an increase in temperatures and outdoor watering as plants begin to emerge from their winter dormancy. As you are aware, our service area and region are experiencing a significant lack of moisture this year. And conserving water outdoors is the single most effective way of alleviating the strain on our water resources. The Water Conservation Program generally follows a three-prong approach: education, incentives, and enforcement. Today, I'll provide a brief overview of our plans for this spring and summer, focusing on how we can help educate ratepayers efficiently irrigate their yards, provide incentives for creating beautiful yard transformations, and better target sites that waste water. The Water Conservation Program has been anticipating the declaration of a Stage 0 drought advisory, and our team has been working to prepare for these conditions and the related conservation measures triggered by our board-approved drought plan. The Water Conservation team has already begun to implement these measures, which include expanding public outreach efforts and advertising expenditures, a 24% increase over the average season, customizing promotional and educational materials to raise awareness about the current drought conditions, hosting a series of educational drought-focused webinars with a $20 rebate offered to attendees. In fact, our first webinar was last Friday, and about 100 ratepayers signed up. Examples of spring promotions for the Water Conservation Program include bill inserts that will be geared towards the three-prong approach that I mentioned, such as seasonal watering recommendations, rebates, time of day watering restrictions, and tips for maintaining tree health. As I mentioned, we will be expanding our media outreach and expenditures. This includes underwriting with partnerships with popular nonprofit radio stations such as KUNM and KHFM. Public radio underwriting has not been used in the past, and I'm eager to gauge the response. Our plan also includes incorporating digital media ad placements on platforms such as Spotify and YouTube, billboards, newspaper, and television advertisements. On the social media front, we will continue utilizing apps like Nextdoor, Instagram, and Facebook, where a public communications specialist has been sharing water conservation messaging. The Water Conservation Program's 505 Outside monthly newsletter reaches 125,000 subscribers. About half of those subscribers click on newsletter links to explore the full articles. Recently, we've featured articles about the Xeriscape transformation rebate and our upcoming Weather the Drought series of webinars. This month, we reached an agreement with the city's Office of Neighborhood Coordination to include water conservation content in their weekly newsletter that reaches over 40,000 community members. The Lawn to Xeriscape Transformation Rebate is our most successful rebate program. Recently increased to $3 per square foot, the highest in our region, this rebate supports the transformation of water-thirsty lawns into desert-friendly landscapes, featuring plants, drip irrigation, and mulch. This season, we aim to boost participation in this generous program as it remains one of the most effective means for conserving water outdoors. Now, the application and approval process is more involved than our other rebates, and participation in this program involves several steps. To raise awareness about the qualifications, requirements, and process, our team has developed a range of resources for ratepayers. These include in-depth columns in local print and digital newspapers, an article in our 505 Outside newsletter and website, and a 60-minute webinar covering Xeriscape basics and how to take advantage of this generous program. The third prong of our approach to water conservation is water waste enforcement, and we are entering a new era of utilizing advanced metering infrastructure, or referred to as AMI data, to enhance these efforts. One way we plan on using AMI data is for time-of-day violations. Warning letters will automatically be sent to site owners that appear to be using sprinkler irrigation within the restricted hours. With regards to responding to water conservation complaints, patrols will be scheduled based on insights from AMI data. For instance, we will prioritize industrial, commercial, and institutional sites with a history of repeated violations, overwatering, or large areas of non-functional turf grass. Patrols will also be aligned with irrigation days and runtimes to more efficiently document water waste violations. We also plan to strengthen our outreach by sending 1,000 letters and emails per month to residential users in the top 5% of water consumers across our service area. Past efforts of this kind have been effective, and we are eager to expand this initiative on a larger and more consistent scale. To support water waste ordinance enforcement measures, we undertook a focused hiring campaign this winter, recruiting several high-caliber seasonal interns. This month, we onboarded 2 outstanding fourth-year undergraduate students whose skills and enthusiasm will be invaluable in responding to water waste reports and advancing our outreach initiatives. So that was a very brief overview of our plan to promote the water conservation program this spring, and I stand for any questions.
Well, welcome and congratulations on your promotion. Mr. Arbor, I just had a couple of questions related to this. I mean, we've been seeing this for years now. Marketing tool, I know we're always looking for, like, when are we supposed to water now? So we're always looking for the commercial, how many times a week? Just a quick question, does the elephant have a name?
He does, actually. I've learned this myself. His name is Chucky.
Chucky.
Developed from the FOG campaign of Cool It, Can It, Chuck It. So his
Oh, so his name is Chucky.
Yeah.
So we need a, yeah, because one of my grandkids had told me, Nana, when are we supposed to be watering? When does the elephant? And so it made me think, does the elephant have a name? So, well, thank you for all your work. I appreciate it. Again, thanks to everybody at the Water Authority for everything you do. We are on the final item, and that is adjournment. So with no further business, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
I just had just a quick question because when you talk about waterways and overwatering, are you specifically referring to people that water in the wrong times or they water, their duration is too long? What, you know, irritates me just as I'm driving around early in the morning is seeing broken sprinkler heads and the flow of water. Last summer, I saw something I know I called in a couple of times, but it was just, you know, they're timed sprinklers. So I think I was taking my grandson to school at about 7 o'clock in the morning for 3 consecutive days of water. Now, if you went there at 9 o'clock, you wouldn't see the water. So how is that calculated? Is this, it's broken sprinklers basically, and you wouldn't know that they're happening unless you drive by it at that time.
Madam Chair, Member Baca, I appreciate the question, and it's a good one. And the term water waste, for us refers to the water waste ordinance, where folks aren't allowed to have water flowing down the street or beyond their property line or on hard surfaces. And we rely on citizens such as yourself to report water waste. As you mentioned, we have a hotline that you can call in, and it becomes particularly important to note the time of day that you noted that so we can put it on our schedule. We also have a fantastic online water reporting tool, so you can do this from your mobile phone, include photos, which really helps us figure out exactly where the spot is when our interns go by to follow up on that water waste report.
If I mean, I'm just trying to remember, I can't remember because of last summer, but was it, I'm sure I called 311, and I can't remember if they referred me to another number or if they just took the report. What is the protocol?
Madam Chair, Member Baca, yeah, it's a good question. We have our own Water Authority water waste reporting hotline. So you can call the normal number to the Water Authority, the 842 WATR, and hit option number 5 and leave a voicemail with the information about the water waste that you're noting.
So if I called 311, what would happen? What would they do? Would they transfer me, or would they?
They would direct you, Madam Chair, Member Baca, they would direct you to that hotline number.
I think that's what happened. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again. So with no further business,